Okay, hello everyone. So first of all, I have to say I'm always very happy to be here because despite like today was a terrible day. Oops. Okay. No. Today was a terrible day, but when I started planning the class, and I prepared some crazy things for you today, I just became happier. So maybe you should be worried about this, but okay. So today is a day in which you will need your telephones and you will need your computers for your utmost joy, so that you don't need to put them away. And we'll have a lot of work to do for everybody. So we'll have a lot of work to do for, especially I would say for the note keepers and the housekeeper. So since you have your phones, you can just wait for a second to pull out the computers. Since you have your phones, start with this. Okay. So this is the Telegram channel of the course. Maybe let me do this. Everybody should be in it already, but should is the keyword, exactly. So now everybody hopefully is in it, okay? So as you've seen before, today's topic, everyone, are we ready? Okay. So, what about over there? How are you doing? Good? Getting ready? Okay. So today's topic is about organizations, and you will have to do a lot of things today. But why do we need organizations? So I don't even ask you what are organizations. If you want, this is a good first question. So what are organizations and why do we need them? Yes.
Apes alone weak, together strong.
Sorry?
Apes together strong.
Yes, human beings together are stronger. Yes, of course. So, but not just stronger, but why do we need organizations? What does the word organization suggest to you?
Some roles.
Roles. There are things that some people are supposed to do, and therefore also things that some people are supposed not to do. Okay, what else? Rules. What else? Hierarchies. So today I would like to try to see with you. I will reopen this later. I would like to see with you what are other points? Rules, hierarchies, roles, making be stronger together. Yes. What else?
Efficiency.
Efficiency. Yes. We talked about one other thing last time. It was decision making. Okay? Organizations in theory are there to help decision making. Okay? So what I want to do today with you is I want you, okay, I understand you, I asked you to open your computers, but maybe just don't start using them too much yet, okay? I want to challenge with you some of the assumptions that we have about organizations and trying to understand how organizations work in general and in specific. And I tried to find some good counterexamples of the things that we normally assume about organizations. And I would like together with you today to kind of demolish these assumptions and understand how these connect to the idea of digital transformation that we have seen in the past and to ideas that we will see in the next lectures. Okay? So, why do we talk about organizations in a class on innovation entrepreneurship?
A company is an organization.
Every company is an organization, yes. And then what? If you have to develop your own idea, you need an organization. You will continue? You need roles, you need different competencies. There is also one more thing. I mean, as you are developing your idea, will the organization remain the same? What?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Optimally not.
Sorry?
Optimally not.
Optimally not. So when should this change?
When the environment and the requirements change.
Okay, when the environment and the requirements change, and in practice, what could this mean? It's for everyone, not just for you. Yes.
After it attains a certain saturation level,
You reach a saturation level in what?
if an organization is created or when it's built, they have a certain goal that they will be achieving this particular goal. After attaining that goal, they should change. It should change to
Okay.
grow again.
So if you set a certain goal, like, I don't know, we want to grow to 10 people, after you reach the goal, you need to change your organization, because now you need to change what are the goals, at least of it. Maybe you also need to change the structure.
Yeah.
What else? Why do we talk about organizations in a course of I&E? So I have a question for you. Can you name an ICT, actually, can you name ICT companies, plural, that were already existing 50 years ago? ICT companies. So was ICT existing 50 years ago? Yeah, in 69, yes, there was ICT, right? Can you name companies that were existing already 50 years ago?
IBM.
Yes, IBM is one. No, Microsoft was not there yet.
Apple.
No, Apple was not there yet.
HP.
HP was not there yet. Sorry? Olivetti, okay, now is an ICT company. It was still there. That's a good catch. What else?
Cisco.
Cisco, okay, I think actually was started in the 70s, in the early 70s. But yeah, what else? Sorry? AT&T, which was more of a telecommunication purely company at the time. Yes, what else? Oracle? Oracle was there. Okay? But if you look at these companies, there is one key structure. What are they today? Are they startups? Are they scale-ups? Are they agile? Or are they like big, huge corporate dinosaurs? Right? They all project the same image. They all have the same structure. So, as you are coming to a course in innovation entrepreneurship, and we are talking about entrepreneurship, do we really expect you to make the new corporate? Well, maybe, I hope so. But it's very hard that you will start tomorrow to have some sort of an entrepreneurial role in a corporate with 10,000 people or 100,000 people, right? So why do we talk about organizations in an I&E course?
Maybe to use it as a reference.
To use as a reference. To do what?
To lead or participate in the organization.
To lead and to participate in the organization where you will be put in. So the goal of today is to understand how these organizations work, what are their decision models inside them, what does the structure of an organization tell you about how they operate, and then identify what you can do to make this work as a tool for you. Okay? So, let's finish this introduction with one last question. Can you give me examples of organizations, formal, informal, big, small, any type?
The UN.
The UN, okay. What type of organization is it?
Non-governmental.
Yeah, okay. Something which is above governments, right? But it's something which is it a company or what? Don't worry too much about the formal definition, just a touch, okay?
No, it's an institution.
It's an institution which is not a company, okay? So it's not a for-profit, and it's a sovereign national organism. Okay. What else? So UN is one. What else?
The EU.
Sorry?
The EU.
The EU. Yes. What is the EU?
I think that it looks like the UN.
Yeah, quite similar. The EU has even more structures inside it,
Yeah.
right? So what is inside the EU? What are other organizations inside the EU?
the European Commission,
the Commission,
the
okay,
European Council,
the Council,
the European Parliament.
the Parliament. Okay, so at least we covered the top three. Okay, and then what do we have?
You
The
have
European Central
the-
Bank.
Then you have also the member states, which are organizations.
the member states themselves. So you see a lot of nesting there. Okay, starting from a supranational organization. What else? Other ideas? Yes.
Universities.
Universities organizations. We'll have later a bit of a study on how to make sense of the structure of a university, if we can make sense of the structure of a university. What else? Other types of organizations.
As we mentioned, all companies.
All companies, of course.
Can we call the non-profit parties an organization?
Non-profit,
Non-profit, like donation,
Of
charities, or like that.
of course. So as long as we have, let's not focus too much on giving a precise definition, but as long as we have some sort of a structure, some roles, some division of labor of some sort, and some decision procedures which are part of this, let's just keep for now this in the bucket of organizations. What else?
Then cities, neighborhoods.
Cities,
counties.
neighborhoods, city council,
Orchestras,
orchestras, yes?
private sectors,
Private?
sections.
Private sectors, like what?
That involves like different private sectors have different companies in it. Like
Okay, so it could be like a trade union.
it's a kind of trade union, but these work hand in hand with community, but they also have their structures and they put their own purpose.
Okay, so you're saying that you can group different companies working in the same sector as some sort, sometimes they can also work as an organization together, right? To have some impacts on policy and all of this. This can be trade unions or can be like Confindustria in Italy, where all the, let's say, people working in factory-related production, the secondary sector, let's say, coalesce together to have common goals and policy. But you can also go very much more micro. What about the family? Some sort represents an organization, right? So today I want to start with you with a very strange organization, which is here. Okay. Maybe also Chiara can help me distribute some of these. We start from the back, I start from the front. So we would ask you to work in pairs, okay? And have some 20 minutes to read this paper, okay? Maybe you can work together. So before you start reading it, I just want to give you some quick. I will distribute a PDF of this also in the Telegram channel now. You can work with the back. I want to give you some, let's say, reading tips, okay? And then I will distribute the PDF also in the Telegram channel, so you can work in parallel if you prefer. So, I give you a brief overview of what is there, and then I let you explore this in a bit of more depth. Okay? Okay. All right. Do we have copies? Okay, so this you will see is an academic paper, okay? And it's a paper coming from a field which is not ICT. It's Administrative Science Quarterly is the journal, so it's something very different from what you would normally be reading, okay? So I suggest, in order to read this somewhat successfully, I suggest you to give you, I will give you 3 main hints. First, read the abstract, okay? So try to understand what the hell are we talking about, okay? Second, try to distinguish what is meaningful for the topic of this discussion from what is too technical. Okay? You will see there will be big sections where they talk about different methodologies and different types of analysis and comparative studies with other decision theories and so on. Maybe it's not a good use of your time to go into this. Okay? Third, the first priority should be for you to make sense of the story. Okay? This paper is a story. So once you understand the context, and once you understand what is too technical for you to dive into, try to get a solid grasp of the story. Okay? Of what this is. So, I will distribute the PDF on the Telegram channel, so you can also have it in digital version. And then I would give you, let's say, 25 minutes until 3:15. If you need to go to grab a coffee, you can go to grab a coffee. If you need to go to the bathroom, you can go to the bathroom. After this, we will probably, I have some guiding questions to give you that we can answer all together. And we will have kind of by row, we can try to discuss these. So, but all try to get an understanding of this, and then we will go row by row to kind of understand this paper better. Okay? So I give you the copy, and then I also come by the desks to help you. I think this level of silence has never been attained in history in a class. So let's go for one key question. So what are we talking about? What is this story about? A fire. Okay. So where did this happen, more or less? Where? In Montana, in the US, in a forest, and there is a scene in a prairie. Okay. How many people are involved, more or less? 13. Actually, we'll see 16. 13 are the ones that died. Okay, and this is the key point. So, is this a first-hand recounting? So, is this a person telling their experience or what? No. What? How is this told?
Through a book.
Through a book. So this is a paper about the experience told in a book that tells the experience of somebody. Okay, so it's a third-hand experience. So try to filter out the part that regards the upper levels. You don't care about the fact that it's a book. Okay, so don't focus too much on everything that talks about the book and so on. Keep going. Just wanted to give you some pointers. Okay, one more question. Did you identify some key actors, some key people of this? Dodge is one, okay. Who else? Sorry? MacLean, okay. MacLean is the writer of the book, whoever, okay. But in the story, focus on the story.
Hellman is the second in charge.
Hellman, yes. Sorry? And Dodge, okay. These are the two or three key actors that I think where you were needed to find. Then, one more thing. I hope you are skipping all the parts in which they go very much into detail about all the various theories, comparing the structures and so on. Now, in these last few minutes, try also on these 2 pages on the attitude of wisdom, respectful interaction, I think you can skip quite clearly, okay? Now, in the last few minutes, try to look at what are the conclusions, okay? Which they are towards the end, but not necessarily. So the most of them are, you can see some of them in the very last page, okay? When they talk about democratic participatory behavior, engage the crew, follow-up questions. So in the last 3 pages, try to look for conclusions, okay? For the lessons learned. Try to also identify if there are things that out of the disaster became standard practices, okay? Okay, so since we have discovered that myself and Chiara share the fact that we were both in the Scouts, we will now divide you in 3 groups like we do with the Scouts, okay? So, we will go like this. You are man, you, sorry, You are Gauss, and you are disaster. Okay? You are man, you are Gauss, and you are disaster. Okay? And you continue like this till everybody is either a man, a Gauss, or a disaster. Okay? So please. So start from here, and we divide in 3 groups. Okay? So, folks, just to be okay. So you got how this works is just man, Gauss, disaster. Gauss, disaster. Disaster, man. Gauss.
These are the 3 words.
Okay, guys, it's not such a complicated thing. You are the digital innovators of tomorrow, and you are unable to sequence 3 words.
Maybe it's easier to count 1, 2, 3, and then
Sorry, it's too engineering. This I think is too much of a simplification. Okay, sorry. It will be either man, Gauss, disaster, or nothing. Okay. So where did we arrive? So you were Gauss, and then disaster.
So he's man.
This is the order. Man goes disaster.
Gauss, disaster. No, you are man. It's not possible. Okay, whatever. You got it. So you are at man. You said disaster. Okay, so back. Man. Okay, perfect. So now, hopefully you all remember in which group you are. If you don't, you are a man Gauss disaster. Okay, all the 3 of them. So, let's have man in the first 2 rows, Gauss in the middle 2, and disaster in the second 2. Okay, the last 2. Keep the papers. If you have too many, don't worry. Whatever, you will survive. Okay, so. Now, so we have man, the first 2 rows, Gauss, the middle 2, and disaster, the last 2. Hopefully, right? Okay, I don't understand why there's appears to be very few Gauss and a lot of disaster, but it's okay. So, now we will go a bit into the analysis of this paper and try to make sense of it together, okay? In general, let's try to have this division, just to try to respond to these questions. So, man, you will be mostly concerned with the what of this paper, okay? So what this paper is talking about. Gauss, you will be helping us with the who, okay? So who are the key actors and who are the people that are doing something in this story. Disaster, you will be telling us about the how and the why of this, okay? Of what is happening here. So let's have I have some guiding questions here with which we can start discussing a bit about. So, what were the key points of failure? So we can have here and also there. So what happened? What are the key points of failure that made this? So, let's start even from before. So what happened in general? Can you help us from the first 2 rows? What happened in general?
People died in a fire.
People died in a fire. Okay, were they supposed to die in the fire? No. What were they supposed to do? Stop the fire. Okay. So something happened, something went wrong. Middle group. Who were these people? Sorry? No, who were these people? Smoke jumpers. So smoke jumpers are what? The firefighters that go into live action when there is a wildfire happening. Okay? Were they well-trained people or ill-trained? Ill-trained or well-trained? Good or bad training? So who thinks they were good training good? Okay, who thinks they were training badly? Okay, so I mean, of course they didn't react well to this, so they were not trained perfectly, but they were all subjected to some training, okay? So, and were these people experienced or inexperienced, young or old? Young. Mostly young, okay? How many experienced people did they have with them? So how many were they, and how many experienced people did they have with them? So they were supposed to be 16. How many actually jumped? 15. What happened to the last one? He fell sick. And I think this is the best way. So sorry, because this, I think there is an incredible amount of euphemism. I was saying. So his repressions had caught up with him. In other words, he shit his pants. Okay, he was scared shitless. Okay, poor guy. I don't blame him. But it's good that how they use this euphemism. Okay, so 15 jumped. How many seniors did they have? Two. Okay, who were? Dodge and Harrison. Okay, so 2 seniors in the whole thing. Who were the leaders of the teams? Dodge and he had a second in command. Sorry? Hellman. Exactly. Okay, so we have the key actors in place. So let's now discuss a bit very quickly the how and why. So 13 people died. How did they die? Burned, okay. Congratulations, Watson. Yes. Sorry?
Failing to heed instruction.
Yes, they were failing to understand and to follow the instructions that were given.
Dodge tells them to lie down in the ashes, he survives, and then they can't heed instructions.
Okay, so let's keep this element of Dodge surviving for a second because we will go back to this later. Okay? So 30 people die in the fire because they're unable to follow the instruction. Okay? How did this happen? Why did this happen?
Because they think they fought as a single entities, not as a group.
Okay, they were thinking as individuals and they were no longer thinking as a group. Why did this happen?
Because of fear.
Fear? What else?
Leadership.
Lack of leadership. What else?
Lack of communication.
Lack of communication.
Poor structures.
Poor structure. Okay. What else?
Lack of trust.
Lack of trust. So all of these things go there. So let's look at some of these things here, okay? Because these are also key points. So we identified some of the key points of failure, okay? But what did you see were other points of failure? There is one point of failure which happens immediately. Maybe first row also can help with the radio, right? So what happens to the radio? They jump out of the airplane. I think this is the best. You know when you say, okay, maybe we should go home and have a cigarette instead, because you jump off the airplane and the first thing that happens is the radio crashes on the ground. Ciao. Okay, so then off to a good start. Okay, so this was a key point of failure because they were not able to communicate back effectively with the command. So what are other key points of failure? So what happens when they land? Who do they find?
A ranger. I don't know.
Yeah, they find one of the rangers, and what was he doing?
Fighting the fire single-handedly.
And fighting the fire single-handedly and doing something else. He was eating. He was having dinner. It was 5 p.m. So he was having dinner. Okay? What does this tell you? What is this creating?
They were expecting just to have an easy fire to start.
Exactly. They were expecting an easy fire. So now, I want that you keep in touch, keep in mind 2 main points. Cognitive dissonance. Are you familiar what this word is? Okay. So, is somebody familiar with this?
When you expected something and then it's not.
Exactly. When you are expecting somebody rationally, but your senses are telling you something different. You find a block of ice, you put your hand on it, and it's warm. This creates cognitive dissonance. Okay? You are seeing a person speaking on a stage in front of a huge stadium, but the stadium is empty. Okay? This creates cognitive dissonance. It tells you something is wrong here, and something doesn't match here. Okay? And then another thing that I want you to look at is this idea of the look ahead. You know what the look ahead is, even in computer science in general? Or in decision theory, in game theory, something like this? So, a look ahead is something that you have to tell you how far in the future can you see. Okay? So this means if I am playing a game of chess and I can predict the next 3 optimal moves, I have a look ahead of 3 moves. So I can understand with some certainty what are the next 3 moves that are going to be done. Okay? So look at how these things will be different for the different classes of actors. Okay? So for the leader versus the second in command versus the ones that are following. Okay? So they jump in, they find this guy eating his dinner and fighting the fire alone. So what happens next?
The two senior guys had a quick meal too.
Yes, exactly. The 2 seniors also stop to have dinner again. They also say, okay, we are here, let's start by getting our stomach full. Okay. What does this create in terms of cognitive dissonance and of look ahead for everybody else?
Well, for the crew, I think the cognitive dissonance is more accentuated because the command guys are having dinner too, and they think that the fire will be an easy fire, and they will not expect the destructive situation.
The cognitive dissonance, as you said, is reinforced because they are seeing the people that are supposed to be in the lead taking it easy. Okay? But they know that the team that has been dispatched with the idea that this is a dangerous fire. So they are unable to make sense, and this you will find this sense-making word, I think you saw it a number of times here, of the situation. Okay? And the cognitive dissonance becomes stronger. What about the look ahead? So who knows what are the next moves here now? Sorry?
Anyone? Because like they're taking meal, so they could like stop meal and then start to fight the fire or just.
So did they have a briefing before starting? Is there a briefing specifically mentioned? No. So how do they operate? They just sit there till somebody tells them what to do, or they have a better idea? Sorry?
Dodge saw the fire.
Yeah, Dodge saw the fire, but what is the so they land there, do they know what they are supposed to do or not?
No,
No,
there
they
is
didn't.
communication, I think, between the crew.
So they don't have a precise instruction because they don't have a full chain of communication. But if you were a firefighter in this situation, would you know, at least you probably have some standard procedure to follow, right? So you probably don't know specifically what to do, but you know some general rules to follow, okay? But can they, if you were in that situation, would you rely on the general rules? Or would you think it is a wise idea to rely on the general rules? Yes, no, why? Also for the back, since it's a why.
I would trust the seniors because they have a lot of experience, and if they start teaching, then I would assume it's not a big deal.
So you trust the seniors over the standard procedure because this is a situation which you have understood is non-standard, okay? So you are trusting the seniors more than you are trusting your training. So what was before your look ahead? I land and I need to start doing A, B, and C because these are my standard moves, vanishes. So who has a look ahead now? Only the seniors. Okay? So how do they manage this? They have their meal and then what do they do?
Somebody start fighting the fire alone.
There was somebody fighting the fire alone already from before, but what do they do? Yes.
According to the story, it looks like George and us in command, they have taken the tour around, so they noticed that the other side is a bit drop. So they asked the second in command to divert now the team to go north to prevent them from.
So, exactly. They do a survey of the territory and they understand which area is where the fire is coming from and where it is going. And they divert the team to go where?
North,
north,
opposite of the fire.
opposite of the fire, because they're saying if we want to prepare, we need to prepare farther away. Okay, what happens then? More or less. I think it's.
They find fire where there shouldn't be.
They find a fire where there shouldn't be. And what is their reaction?
Panic.
Again, you should look at what is the cognitive dissonance and what is the look ahead. From the point of view of the juniors, they're just following the seniors. Okay? They don't have a proactive, they cannot have a proactive attitude because they don't know what is going to be happening, but they know because of the cognitive dissonance that this is not a standard situation. So panic starts to build up. They find a fire where it shouldn't be, and what happens later? Not too much later.
They escaped. They ran away in a grass field, I think.
They run away because they were in what? They were in the gulch, and the gulch has what? So the first scene, where is it? Is a grass field, is a mountain, is a forest, is a
About 2.5 feet
In a river,
grass.
tall grass. So they are in tall grass. And they move then later to a prairie. Okay? And what happens in the prairie?
the fire thing. Then Dodge like lit the fire
Okay, but what is happening there? Why does Dodge need to light a fire?
because of he has look ahead.
Not
And-
only, there is something more. What? The wind changes. Okay? Because they had a forecast about the speed of the fire, the speed of propagation of the fire. But once they went into the prairie, the fire starts going much faster because it starts going at 200 meters per minute, which is scary. Okay? And the fire starts moving very fast. So, what happens then? Here is the real tragedy. Because what happens?
Yeah, okay. Dodge, that is the most experienced one, or one of the two, has I think a more farther look ahead and more experience. So he lit a fire, and for hiding under the ashes, because he knows that the fire will catch them, and there's no other chance than that hiding under ashes. Like there are two choices: run and hope, or hide under the ashes and have a more probability.
Okay, so what happens here is, thank you very much, what happens here is something which is very counterintuitive. Because Dodge, who is the leader of the group, takes a patch of grass in the grasslands, confines it, and then sets fire to it. Okay? So what happens is that he burns a part of the grass, and then he instructs everybody to go in the burnt part so that the fire would go through them without burning them. You see how this works? It's a bit of a strange tactic, but it's the one that works. So, this is what he proposes, and what does the team do?
No one.
They continue to run. They do not listen. They do not follow his authority. Okay? So what happens? Unfortunately, they all die. Only of these 15 people that go, only 3 survive, which are the ones that stay with Dodge. And one of them dies 5 years later because of complications related to lungs, okay, of a lung disease. Okay, so this is the story. So let's look a second at these points of view. So we talked about the key points of failure. We talked about what happens with the cognitive dissonance. How did the organization structure affect the decision making? So what was the organization structure here? What were the roles? We said there were 3 roles. Leader, second in command, everyone else. Okay? And the everyone else, did they have specialized roles inside the everyone else, or were they just everyone else? They were just everyone else. Okay? So, how did this organization structure affect the decision making? Who can make the decisions here? The leader. Can somebody else take the decisions? No. Is there a situation where I can use the fact that I have 13 people to facilitate the decision making or not? How? In this organization structure, how can I use the fact that I have 13 people to facilitate the decision making? I cannot. Or what are you suggesting? Making subgroups. This is how I could use it, but did they do it? No. They had 13 people plus 2, but 13 people, okay, plus 1, the second in command, all following the same leader. The organization structure did not facilitate decision making because the leader represented what is called a bottleneck. Because all of the decisions have to go through the same limited capacity of resources, which, by the way, needs to do another fundamentally important task, which is improvisation. Okay? So, how much was the space for improvisation in this scenario? Was there a lot of space for improvisation, or was there not a lot? There was not a lot of improvisation space at all. Yet, this is what saved the 3 people that survived. Okay? Because this is what was able to save Dodge. The fact that he still had the capacity to improvise. But, did the organization structure aid his improvisation or not? Not at all. Because he had in theory, he had a super high load to manage. And he did not have a lot of space to improvise. Which, in the end, was the thing that could have saved them. Okay? How does the culture of these firefighters affect the decision making? So what is the culture of the firefighters? If you read this thing, you read how they talk, what are their ways of talking about the equipment and all these things. So how is their culture? How does their culture look like? Are they friendly? Are they hierarchical? Are they macho? Are they submissive? How is their culture? At a feeling, again. Are they militaristic like? Are they friends in a bar like? How are they? Yes?
Maybe they thought themselves that they are professional adventurers.
So they call themselves professional adventurers. This is the name they give to themselves. What does this tell you?
Like they are confident and they have like training or they have the instructions or look ahead to do the things or
they are confident, they trust their training, they trust themselves to be not only well trained but also very independent because they are adventurers. Okay? So how does this culture clash with the situation?
not following the leader.
You don't follow the leader because you say, you know what, I am an adventurer as much as you are. So I know what decisions to take if I want to survive. Okay? So the culture affects the decision making. And in this case, works against an effective decision making. Okay? Now, what about the structure versus the size of the organization? So we said there is an organization of 13 people. 15 people on the field, 15 people, one sub-leader, one leader. Does the size of the organization, is the size of the organization optimal for the structure that it has? No, because the first suggestion that came from the housekeeper was you need to make subgroups. Because these are too many people to manage effectively as a one single block. So there is a problem of division of roles, and there is a problem of matching the size of the organization to the structure that it has. So because of this, what was the handling of the authority? So the authority, was it respected? Was it followed despite the fact that it clearly had more experience? No. So what are your conclusions from this? So first, what are the conclusions that the firefighters took out of this? So 3 levels to look at the conclusions. The ones that the firefighters took the ones that Vike, who is the author of the paper, took, and the ones that you as students take. Okay? So let's look at the conclusions of the firefighters. What the conclusions did they take? First, they learned one thing. Practical.
Backup radios.
Sorry?
Backup radios.
Backup radios, yes, and there is another one.
The tactic of building a escape fire.
The escape fire. So the escape fire that Dodge did became a standard practice. They promoted this into the standard operating procedures. Okay? So you can understand that there is no single point of failure here. There are a number of cascading failures that lead to the disaster. So if the escape fire was a standard operating procedure, this would have not happened. So what they have done is that in spite of all of this, they have taken one element and pushed it into the standard operating procedure to avoid a disaster which is of the similar gravity. So now, in order for the collapse to happen again, they need an even worse disaster. This is an inductivist process. They're building upon the previous experience. Okay? So, backup radios and the escape fire. These are the two key conclusions for the firefighters. What are the conclusions of Vike? So, the author of the paper. What does he say? There is one key word that he attaches to organizations. He says organizations need to be more democratic and more resilient. Exactly. So he is saying we need to find ways to make organizations more resilient to disruptions, to challenges. One such way is to make it more democratic, to work towards empowerment of the actors that are in the organization. If you look at all of the literature in organizations nowadays and in socio-technical systems nowadays, it's all about empowerment. It starts from here, or at least here it was already a clear direction. Okay, 26 years ago. Okay, what are the conclusions that you take out of this? Do they need more structure, less structure? Did the structure matter? Did the organization matter? Did it not matter? Was it just chance? Were they doomed to die already anyway? Everybody needs to die at some point. Yes?
They need dynamic structure.
They need a way to change dynamically the structure, but they need more structure. Okay? Does somebody disagree with this? Okay, so before we move on with the second part. Let's have a quick poll, okay? I ask you to rate on a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being very easy and 5 being very hard, to rate how difficult it was to read this, okay? Just for me to understand how you are able to process these kind of things. So 1 is very easy, 2 is easy, 3 is neither easy nor hard, 4 is hard, 5 is very hard, okay? Clear? So just raise your hands. Who thinks this was very easy? 1. Easy? 2. Okay. Neither easy nor hard? 3. Hard? 4. Very hard? 5. Okay. I think I gave you a suitable challenge. Okay, good. I'm happy about this. Now, let's look for a solution. Okay? Let's give you one solution that was especially popular before this structure and which you will find everywhere. And this is especially the solution that comes. You remember we were talking about the uncertainty, the procedural rationality, the idea of looping, of doing incremental innovation and so on. This is the key structure that you will find into this type of management, into the old school type of management. And we will understand whether this works or not, okay? And it is what is called the matrix organization, okay? You will see a lot of these. When you look at organization diagrams for corporates, you will see a lot of this. You will see that these things are structured in 2 directions. One direction groups together people working on the same type of activity. So all the researchers, all the ones working in productions, all the ones working in sales, all the ones looking in finance, all the ones working on HR, and so on. And the other grouping groups together products or activities that the company does in a full cycle. So if you are Fiat, one division will be, in this direction will be the cars, one division will be the trucks, one division will be, I don't know if they do trains, I don't think they do it anymore, okay? But you will find that maybe family cars is one product line with its own R&D group, its own sales group, its own production team, its own budgeting team, and so on. Same goes for the trucks, for Iveco. But all of these are also grouped in what we call functions. So the matrix organizations has these two levels. A level of functions, which work as verticals, and which group all the people that are working on the same type of activity, and a level of division, which assigns people that work together on the same product. Okay? Is this more structured than the firefighters? Okay? Is this a quite clear thing where you can understand how things work? But there is a bug in the matrix. Can you find a bug in the matrix? Yes.
If the finance department wants to talk with sales, it's a mess.
If the finance department
wants to talk with sales, it's a big mess.
Wants to get to work.
Wants to talk
with sales?
With sales, it's a big mess because
it's very difficult.
Yes.
And there is one more problem. There is also another bug in the matrix. Let's see if you can find it here. There is a big bug in the matrix. It's very hard to, as he was saying before, it's very hard to do horizontal movements from one function to the other, and it's very hard to go movements on a vertical, let's say, perspective from one product to the other, because this requires reassigning you in some sense, which is an organizational overhead. And this is why we talk a lot about agile organizations. And now we will see some of these organizations. There is also another key point. Let's say I am here, okay? So I'm product B, production. Who is my boss?
My project manager.
But is my boss the project manager of product B, or is my boss the production boss? Or are they both? What happens if they don't agree with one another? It's not your problem as an employee, but it's our problem as an organization. It's a mess. It's a big problem. It's what is called a double chain of command. Have you ever experienced something like this?
Yes.
Can you give me one example?
I was in the board of a student organization in Lisbon, and we used this structure. So if we had, for example, an event to prepare, and we had like the marketing team, and they were doing some design, and for the organizer of the event, the materials were very good, but then it wasn't according to the brand of the organization. It was super messy to do with.
So how can you debug this?
You can clarify the roles.
Sorry?
Okay, you can just distinguish between roles. For example, one leader can make some responsibilities, while the other is taking specific responsibilities.
You need to add levels of management, and you need to nest more specifically the levels of the role. But if you think of the procedural rationality, if you think of this idea of doing routines, what happens when you do this? Is it for free that you can do this? You are spending resources, you're spending time, you're spending manpower just to try to make sense of and making something work at a baseline level. Okay? So this is the bug in the matrix. The bug in the matrix is that all the transitions from one side to the other are very hard to make, and there are these double chains of command. Okay? So now I want that you do some more exploration, this time much shorter. We can keep man, gouge, disaster, okay? And this time we go on a much shorter thing, and then you will have time to go deeper into this on your own. Just 5 minutes, try to read things. I will put the links, I will need again to put them on the group, and then the housekeeper will distribute them. So we will be looking at 3 companies in the gaming industry, okay? I'm just taking these because this is the industry that I know better, okay? But the point is, I am quite interested, and I've done quite some research in the business of games, so I think I can share some of this with you. And I want to take 3 organizational structures in the gaming industry that show you how, from the biggest giant to the smallest and newest startup, everybody is doing things to try to solve these bugs, to try to solve these organizational challenges, okay? And to behave in a way that makes taking decisions better and faster. So the three cases that we will be looking at, I can tell you now, then I will give you the links, are Ubisoft, which is a big corporate of gaming. They are Valve Software, which is another big corporation, 25 years old, that has basically the monopoly over the distribution of digital video games. And it is a company, a Finnish company called Supercell, which is a company that makes some of the most revenue generating games in the mobile market, okay? So we'll be looking at these three cases, and I will put here some guiding questions, okay? I share them with you, I read together just so that we are all aligned. How much can an individual impact the organization? So you understand, in the firefighters, this was a binary thing. The leader can do all the impact, the followers can do nothing, okay? So how does this apply to these companies that you will see? How quickly can the organization respond to disruptions? A problem happens, how much does that organization need to pay, and how quickly can they respond to this? Before they can react, how much time, how much money do they spend? How does the organization innovate? So how do they make sure they stay at the lead? How can they scale? How do they keep growing in their market? What are the key decisions that they make? And who are the bottlenecks in the decision making? Okay? So I think we can do this. We can do Ubisoft, Valve, and Supercell. Okay? So start looking them up online. Start understanding what, if there is anything relevant here. I will now send the links to the housekeeper. The housekeeper will put them on the Telegram, and you will find some more material that I found that gives you an example of this. Okay? Okay. Let's take some, whatever you have is fine. So first of all, let's try to see, before this class, who knew already about Ubisoft? Raise your hands. Okay, who knew about Valve? Who knew about Supercell? Okay, it's interesting because still I guess that this is something which at least you knew something about. Okay, so I tell you how this works. Here you have some links, okay? Some of them are the ones that I shared with the housekeeper, some are different. If you want to find a bit more and to go a bit deeper into these stories after the class, the slides will be on the website and you will be able to find more information on these things on the links here, okay? So Ubisoft, what did you get from Ubisoft? So, sorry? A lot of?
Images.
A lot of images, for sure, a lot of memes, okay? But
images in the words. I don't know why, but in your link there are two paragraphs and
okay.
2,000 images.
Okay, that's strange. Okay, that's strange. I will double check, but maybe I got the wrong link because I read this 2 or 3 weeks ago and I was looking in the history, so maybe I picked the wrong one. But what is the key point there? What do you think? I still think it was something. Yes.
Yes, Ubisoft is like a French company that want to make games and have a copyright over their games. But they didn't get what they want easily, so they try to go to the digital platform and make online games.
I took the wrong link. Okay. I'm sorry. I realized this was my mistake. Okay.
So there are difficulties to have a copyright over their games, so they shift to the digital platform. Plus, they want to hire professional developers. And give them less, of course, wages. So they hired one of the young developers that he has skills in developing and innovation with less, of course, monthly wage.
Okay, so they are a big corporate that has a lot of problems. So Ubisoft is a corporate, okay, huge company that works very much matrix style. They need to make sure that they have various divisions working on the various games, and also various divisions working in different geographical spaces, and then they have teams and groups of people that are working on the same type. They have artists, they have programmers, they have producers, and they have all the different roles, let's say, also grouped functionally. Okay, but they are mostly divisional, still matrix type. Their key problem is managing their sales to make sure that they keep a certain level and they float above the ground. Now, I'm sorry because this was one of my mistakes in procuring the correct link to you, but one of the key challenges that Ubisoft has faced recently is that they were pushing for harder, more revenue-generating business models. And in doing so, they forgot to work on the innovativeness of their games, which is the key point that in the end makes all the games sell. So what they had to do is that they had to take a step back and introduce games pitches in the studios. The studio that works with the various subgroups now have a very precise schedule of pitching the game before they start developing, and making sure that this game is up to a certain level of standards in terms of innovativeness. So they can no longer say, we take what was there the year before, we do it better with more graphics, we deliver it, we put more money for us, ciao. They have introduced levels and checkpoints where they need to check whether the things are innovative enough, and they are all doing pitching in the same way that you will be doing a lot of pitching in your next 2 years, okay? I'm sorry, this was my mistake in giving you the correct link. What about Supercell? What is the key feature of Supercell? Yes?
They are team-based on the decisions.
They are team-based on the decisions. So all the decisions are not given and not driven by the main company, but they are driven by the single team, right? So why are they called Supercell?
Because the teams are called cells, and there are small teams from 10 to 17 people.
So there are small teams of 10 to 17 people. Each team is called a cell, and the supercell is the container of all the teams. Okay? So you see the idea of the subgroups, the idea of breaking the organization down into smaller, more manageable parts, which have less of an overhead in the organization. What about Valve? What is the key point of Valve?
That's hierarchy.
No hierarchy, flat hierarchy. There is, I couldn't find the picture, which was one of the best, where there is basically, the company is Gabe Newell, which is the CEO of Valve, Bob the cleaner, and then in the middle is written everybody else. Okay? And this is their company structure. It's on their website for everybody to see. And this is how they work. And in this article here, by the way, this is a website which has a terrible name, but it is the best website you can find on games business and on games development. This has all the best authors from the practice that write here. So it's something that if you're interested, you should be reading. So we have seen the corporate that needs to go the startup way. The startup that when it becomes too big breaks down in more startups. And Valve, which for 25 years has tried to make sense of itself by trying to become completely flat and keeping this completely flat structure, which was probably impossible to maintain rationally. You would think it never worked. So, how much can an individual impact the organization in the three scenarios? In the corporate, can an individual do a lot? No. In Supercell, can they do a lot? Yes. In a bottom-up perspective, because they start having an impact on the team, and their impact is mostly limited to the team, but can change the strategy of the company. Because what they're saying is we have n teams working in parallel. Each one of them is developing a game. If the game is bad, we discard it and we let them start from scratch. And they start developing a new game. And the cost of doing this, which in a corporate would be huge, in their case is drastically reduced because they're working with smaller teams. In Valve, how much can an individual impact the organization?
A lot.
A lot. Potentially, they can start a new project or kill it on their own. And Valve, okay, they have many projects, but their big projects are like 3. Okay? So if an individual wakes up and says, I want to do something, unless that something is called Half-Life 3, they can do it. Okay? Yes.
Can they do Portal 3?
Yeah, okay. Unless it contains a 3 in there, they can do it. Okay? This is their key point. So, how quickly can the organization respond to disruptions? For Supercell. Fast, slow, so and so. Super fast, because in the end, it's all down to the single cells. To Valve, how quickly can they respond? Fast. Most of the times, they are the source themselves of the disruption. For Ubisoft, how quickly can they respond? Actually, quite fast. Because even though they failed, this is a live case. They critically failed a launch 2 weeks ago of one of their latest games, which was one of the Ghost Recon games. And they have already changed their whole internal policies to make sure this doesn't happen again. So, in the moment in which the corporations start following the trend of the smaller teams, of the more creative thinkers, it turns out they can respond pretty fast as well. This was one of the key interesting things. So, how does the organization innovate? In the corporate.
They have the structure of a startup, so they can.
In the corporate.
Yeah.
They cannot, you're saying. But I didn't get what you're...
They changed the structure, so
okay.
now they can innovate a lot.
They change the structure to make sure that they have a structure that facilitates the innovation. So they work more as a startup with the pitches. Okay? With Valve, how do they innovate? Randomly. Sorry?
From top to bottom. So if someone has a
From
negative
the
idea,
bottom to the top.
they can only push downwards.
Okay, this is normally called a bottom-up. So from an individual, you go to the top. So from the stance of an individual, you create a full organization that follows the idea. So this is normally called bottom-up, but the reasoning was the correct one. So the reasoning in something like Valve, where it's fully horizontal, you innovate by relying and by pushing the innovation to individuals, to the will of individuals to drive innovation, to form teams, and to push for a solution, and to create a solution.
Like Ice Frog.
Sorry?
Ice Frog.
Like Ice Frog.
Yeah.
For one of the main products of Valve is called Dota, which is a game, which is basically a one-man development team. This guy on his own is doing a lot of the work.
Everything.
Okay? So, what about Supercell? How does the organization innovate? It's again a bottom-up, yes.
By letting each team create their own games.
Exactly.
And build them also.
The key point is that it's still a bottom-up process, but the unit of the bottom-up in Valve is in the individual. In Supercell is the team, is the cell. Okay? What about scaling? Corporate, I will move a bit faster. Corporate scales the corporate way. We hire more people, we do more, bigger, faster, stronger. Okay? Valve scales in an absurd way because they keep scaling horizontally and somehow it still works. Okay? This is the key point. It was argued, and a lot of the theory, and actually now also the practice, is starting to say that model is not sustainable. So they will need to change something at some point because the way that they're keeping scaling horizontally is not working. Maybe they will reach capacity at some point. They will stop hiring people. They will keep that scale. They will be happy the way they are. Supercell scales by adding more cells. They don't care. They just, they have a modular organization, so they can keep doing this. The key decisions and the key decision makers. Corporate follows the corporate way, follows the matrix. Valve has basically one person signing blank checks to everybody. As long as you want to do something, try doing it. If it fails, well, you will have lost 2 times of your week. It's 2 weeks of your life. It's okay. Try to look for something more interesting. Okay? Supercell pushes against this down to the team level. So decisions all happen in the team as if a team were a studio. But unlike an independent studio, a team of 10 people working as their own studio, they have one thing which is a key asset. They have financial security. They have a paycheck. You are a lot more free. Sometimes you're a better creative thinker without a paycheck because you're feeling the urgency. But sometimes having a full stomach makes you able to think, because with an empty stomach, eventually you will not be able to think or do anything else. Okay? So you have seen how digital creates different models and creates different company structures which enable new types of decisions, which enable new types of processes, which make a lot of sense. Theoretically, we can all think about. But this type of environment enables them to actually happen and to succeed, not just to be a theoretical construction. So the agenda of demand gauge, of empowerment, of democracy, and all of this can be found in all of these models. Finally, there are more cases that you can look at. When the slides will be delivered, I encourage you to try to open this link and answer to a question. This is the organization structure of the University of Trento. Ask yourself a question like, if I want to do X, who I need to talk to? And try to find an answer. Tell me if you find 1 person, 2 people, 5 people, 20 people, okay, that you might need to ask to. You will find several layers in an organization which is, comparatively speaking, tiny. Uber is a very interesting example. I'm missing the reference and I'm hoping to fill it in the next days. If I find the person that will give it to me. Is a very interesting example because their whole scaling approach is based on the fact that they have a team of literally 5 people of our age with a suitcase. And what they do is that they send these 5 people to a city. They tell them, you have to hire 3 people. A person that does logistics, a person that does HR, and a computer scientist. Once you find these 3 people, you tell them how to operate Uber in the new city, and you go to the next city. And these 5 people are starting all of the operations of Uber in this way. Okay? So this is a very interesting approach to scaling because they're relying on people which are young, which have no problem with traveling, and they're just using them to seed all of the operations. Work in a very structured and very modular way. And this is a case study of which you will receive a PDF. I don't expect you to know this name. This is a tiny company in Venice that works in the business of restoration of arts and architecture. They started as a classical ditta, we call it in Italian, so it's a small company of like 2 or 3 people that just want to do whatever, architecture. They're a studio of 3 architects. Suddenly they are 17 and they have a lot of work and they're doing a lot of amazing work in a critical city like Venice, but their organizational structure remained the one that they had when they were 5. So this creates all sorts of problems and all sorts of bottlenecks in the decision making. And they're unable to solve them. They thought digital would be the answer, but they are finding out that maybe they just need to think more practically from an organizational perspective. This will lead us to the topic of open innovation, which is the topic of next week, where you will see how innovation is not just a matter of finding ways to do it inside the company, but also to acquire it from the environment, from the external stimuli that you might have, and finding ways to bring it inside. So, the next steps are the following. Wednesday, it's an optional class at 2:30 next door. It's a writing workshop. We will tell you how to write better documents, better reports. We think this will not only apply to this course, it applies in general. We think it's something of general interest. If you have non-attending students that want, friends that want to attend, they're warmly welcome, okay? No presence check. Whoever wants, they show up. 2 hours. It will be myself, Max, and Francesca giving you some useful tips on how to write better documents. Monday, class on open innovation. Wednesday, after the class, Battle 3 preparation room will be communicated to you via the housekeeper. Last point, Battle 4. No, Battle. Yeah, 16:30. 16:30. I made a mistake in the. One more notice. Potentially, keep yourselves free for that day, December 13th at 1:30. Okay? More information about this later. It's just a heads up. Guys, we need to empty the room. So very quickly, please, everybody, as soon as you finish, get out of the room and you can ask me questions outside. Okay? Ciao.